I'm testing this horse, but might as well teach, I guess. So this is an older horse I'm testing for somebody. He doesn't seem to care about anything, which is great. That's the good thing about horses with experience. And he's just doing his job. So what can we talk about, honey? When you're testing horses, you're trying to make sure they can handle the terrain you have. So we're doing uphill. He's good. He engages his back end. I can feel him driving with his back end. Oh, and he tried to canter, but that's probably because somebody let him canter before. And so he's speeding up a little bit, but nothing bad. So this shouldn't scare anybody. See, there's a little canter step. Oh my goodness, he's fun. What a fun guy. And somebody taught him to canter nicely, so that's the good thing, right? And he made it up that hill pretty good. My little lesson horse, Nichols, has a hard time getting up that hill. He's a little bit better. Okay, so now we're just in the deep sand. It's good, and then we got some step ups up here. So here comes a step up. I just let them put their head down so they can look if they want to. Because again, their vision isn't the same as ours. The best vision they have is usually at age 6, and then it goes down after that, which is normal. That's like us. So that shouldn't panic anybody, but that's why, if the horse is nice and calm and they want to take a look at something, I am fine with that, because I want them to see where they're going and know how high to pick up their feet. Oh, I know what we'll talk about today. So I'm going to talk to you about something called proprioception. It's a big, long medical term. It freaks people out. They're like, what does that mean? And what proprioception is, it's in humans, dogs, all animals. But it's an awareness of your body, space and things. Like, I know how big I am to get in between two trees, but also where your feet are. So with horses, if they have really bad proprioception, then they usually don't know where their feet are and where to put them down. And so those are the horses that can be stumbling. See, he put his head down to look, and he's getting through this very narrow part very good. But if a horse doesn't have good proprioception, it doesn't know where to place its feet or how to place its feet, or if it stumbles, it gets stuck in a gully, it doesn't know how to get out of it. Now, each person is different, just like each horse is different. So you'll see, people that are very agile, and they can jump in and out of stuff, and, they're very quick with their feet, and they just have a natural ability to do things. So my horse Shane is like that. He's very quick on his feet. He could, if something happened, the footing gave out, he'd be able to leap up, get us back on the footing. I can just tell from watching him loose and everything, this horse went up the hill well, how good he is. So there's other horses that are clumsy, right? And those are the horses that have bad proprioception. So there can be reasons they have bad proprioception, but sometimes it's just that's the way they're born. They're just not very agile, and they're not very athletic. It doesn't mean they can't get better. It doesn't mean they can't be sure-footed. It just means we have to help them to get there. So first, if you're testing for proprioception, you want to make sure that horse can feel its feet. So you'll see the vets test it with their pen. They'll poke the horse in the foot with the pen. So if you're poking it with the pen and it's not moving its feet at all, it probably cannot feel its feet. And then it's good to test the horse over the poles. Does it trip over the poles? The pacey ones will normally trip more over the poles because it's more difficult for them to get over it. And so the pacier they are, seems the harder time they have with the proprioception, but it's also the locomotion, how they're moving. So if you got a tripper, there's many things to check, but today we're just talking about the proprioception. So are they aware of where their feet are? Now, some horses have grown up on hills and mountains and different terrains. They've been on sand, and they've been on rocks, and they've been through mud, and they've been through water, and so they have learned where to put their feet and how to get themselves through those things. And then there's other Horses that have been on flat land their entire life and they don't know how to go up and down a hill, they've never stepped over a log, they haven't gone through water, they haven't been ridden over rocks. So if the horse is naturally athletic and agile and has good proprioception, it still might be able to do all those things. But a horse that doesn't wouldn't know how to get by those things. Now we're going over roots. So he's just slowing down, he's being cautious, which is good. You'd rather have a horse do this, slow down and take its time, than run down something and not know where it's putting its feet. So as he goes down these things, these are all tests. Does he know where to put his feet as we go down the hill? Does he put his weight on his back end, or is all his weight on his front end? If it's on his front end and you're going downhill and that horse trips, he's going to fall over. So you're trying to see what do they do naturally. So either this horse has good proprioception, he was born with it, or somebody taught him how to do those things. So it could be either one, because this is an older horse. Now, some horses, again, you might have an older horse and he's horrible through those things. He's tripping, he's falling, and it's not that anything is wrong with them. Say the vet's checked and we can't find anything wrong with them. And then they give you some crazy diagnosis. Maybe he has wobblers, or maybe he has EPM, maybe he has this, but all the tests are coming back negative. Those are more likely that the horse has not had the experience, and so I'm running that with one hand, just to show the person who's looking at this horse. Those are the horses you have to teach them how to do it. So think about the football players. You see the football players play, and they're being tackled, and they're able to outmaneuver the other people running after them. They're able to leap over some of the other players, fly through the air, do somersaults, do all this crazy stuff. And sometimes they just land on their feet and they keep going. And you're like, oh my God. They have very good proprioception. Now, why is that? Well, if you ever watch them practice, you'll see them go through the tires. You'll see them do all these kind of, for the horses, we call it gymnastic exercises, where they're stepping over things and they're doing things really fast, and they're turning one direction, grabbing the ball, turning the other. And so they're doing all this stuff to get better at it. So it's the same with the horses. If you have a horse that keeps tripping and doing stuff, don't just keep riding it. That's not that's part of the answer, but not the full answer. So again, he's engaging himself uphill. He knows what to do. He's pushing with his hindquarters instead of pulling with the front end, because we don't want him pulling, we want him pushing. Good boy. So this horse is he's quiet, but he's athletic, and so far seems very sure-footed, aware of his feet, and knows what to do going up and down hills, because this is not the easiest trails. So you have a horse that's very trippy. What do you want to do? You want to work with it, and so you'll see me using poles. I put poles in a circle, I put poles in a straight line. Some of the times I put they're like 4 of my feet spaced through it. Sometimes I'll put the poles 3 feet apart. Sometimes I will just throw out the poles wherever, so it's all uneven. So they might get there in 2 steps, or it might be 3 steps, or it might be 1.5 steps. Because what I'm trying to teach the horse is you need to figure out where to put your feet. You need to figure out to shorten your stride to get over that. Okay? Then, once they can do the poles and they're getting better, because you don't want to scare them, you slowly getting them better. So once they can do the poles and they're doing quite well, then I know they have a clue, and I start raising the poles. So I'll raise some off the ground, I'll make some cross rails or jumps with other ones, and with some I might raise one side and not the other. And you're making like an obstacle course, and then every day you walk the horse through it. You got to do these things 3 to 5 times a week for the horse to learn and improve. It's just like kids going to school. They don't go to school 1 day a week. They would learn nothing. So you have to do it over and over again so they can progress and get better. And so the horse gains confidence. He learns what to do with his feet. Now, when he goes over the poles and he's doing that well with the poles just on the ground, and then you raise them up, what's going to happen is the horses that don't have good proprioception, or clumsy or lazy, they're going to hit those poles. They might trip and fall. So you don't want to be on the horse. You want to do this with the lunge line or in the round pen. And you want to see how, he handles it. And so again, some of them will just fall on their face, but that's how they got to learn. So you just don't want to be on them when they're doing it. So what you do is you do it at least 5 to 10 minutes, 3 to 5 days a week. And then he should keep improving. Now, if the horse keeps getting worse and he's tripping more instead of getting over these obstacles and learning what to do with his feet, something might be wrong with him. So if he doesn't have good proprioception, he might have a neurologic disorder. He could have EPM. He could have Lyme's disease. He could have a kissing spine. He could have arthritis in his neck. So there's lots of reasons for that. So this is also a good test to help you figure it out, because the vet doesn't have time to come to your place every day and do these tests. So the horse should keep getting better, but it takes time. It could take a couple of months for them to get better. And then as they get better, you can change it up some more. So then you can add some other things. You could have, if you got some big tires, not where they're going to get their feet caught, but big tires. And we're going to pause for a second and take in the view. How many cookies left, buddy? Good boy. So sometimes when you turn horses around, they have a little hissy fit, right? So that's always a good test, out and back trail. Let's turn around, but so far he seems fine. Good, he didn't speed up at all. Okay, so then you want to use tires and other things, cones, anything they have to pick their feet up or go around, because you're trying to teach him what to do. Okay, and you want to do that all on the ground. He's going down the hill well. So see, this horse rocked back on his back end. He's taking little steps going down the hill. He's being careful. And then it's our job not to knock them off their feet. So I stand in my stirrups like an inch with, like I take my butt out of the saddle an inch or two. If you look at me, you won't even know I'm doing it. But that's what I do to free up their back, and then I keep my body just upright. You don't need to lean forward. You don't need to lean back. You just need to stay out of their way and let them use their back and teach them to go slow down the hills. So once they can do that stuff in the arena and you're like, he's doing pretty well, he's really not tripping, blah, 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 then get on and ride the horse. And start back from the beginning. Don't go to the high poles. Start with the poles on the ground. Once he can do that with you on his back, and he can do that well, and he's not tripping, he's just getting better and better, then you raise the poles up. Because you're gradually trying to teach the horse. It's the same with the football players. They don't just throw them out there, you know, when they're little kids and go, run through those tires. They show them how to do it. They start slow. Then they make it harder and harder. Because then the kids, as well as the horses, have the ability then to do it. You're like a quarter horse gaited horse. And this is when I can talk really well on horses like this, because I don't really have to do anything. He's taking care of me. That's the best feeling ever, huh? But thank goodness to whoever trained this horse. They did it. So once they can do the flat poles, then you do the raised up poles, but you sit way back just in case they do trip. Okay, keep your feet out in front of you. Now if the horse does trip, when you have a quarter horse or something that's very sure-footed, you can drop the reins and sit back and the horse will catch itself and get itself back up. But when you have one that doesn't have good proprioception, or it's kind of just a goofy, lazy, clumsy horse, remember there's clumsy people, so of course there's going to be clumsy horses. They're clumsy. You got to help him because he doesn't know how to get back up and he's slow to react. So to do that, you shove your feet forward. Think of shoving your feet towards their shoulders. Your feet are still in the stirrups because you want to push on those stirrups. You lean back as far as you can. Think of when you see the guys riding those broncs and their heads are on the horse's tail. Your horse really trips. That's what you want to do. You get your upper body back as far as you can over the, leaning back over the cantle of the saddle, which is the back of the saddle. And you yank up on the reins at the same time. And what that does is you're trying to get all the weight on that horse's back end, and you're trying to get its head up. Because if we can get its head up, we're shifting the weight back, it might be able to catch itself and not fall over. Now, he just went on uneven footing. He caught himself very well. Because again, these are all tests when you're testing the horse. Now, he's going a little faster down the hill, but that's okay because it's a little harder and he's an older horse. So he might be speeding up just to make it more comfortable for him, but never missed a step. Now, when that horse trips, say he did it, I would lean back, I would yank his head up, lean back and pull on those reins, because what I want the horse to do is get its weight back, push on that bit, and get himself back on his feet. So he needs something to push off of. It's like if you tripped and there was a tree, you could put your hand out, push yourself off of that tree, and get your upper body back. But if the tree wasn't there, what would happen? You trip, there's nothing to grab onto, you just fall on your face. So to help these horses that are trippers, the ones who have bad proprioception and don't know what to do with their body, you help them. You shove your feet forward, and I'll try to get this in another video so you can see me doing it. Lean back as far as you can and get their head up. Now, again, by doing that, you're helping them. And with the trippers, you got to be able to do that well. So you need to practice sitting in the arena, and you don't have to yank up on their mouth when you're practicing in the arena. You just practice with a loose rein, thinking, yank the reins up, lean back, push your feet forward, and do it 10 times every time you first get on. So you just got that in your mind, that if something happens, you're training your body to naturally react and do that, because you might have time to think. You just want your body to react. So the more you practice it, the easier your body will just do it if it happens. Okay? So if you're riding with quarter horse people and your horse trips and they say, you know, don't yank on the reins, don't do that, your horse will just catch themselves, that's because they've never been on a trippy gaited horse. And the trippy gaited horses, if you don't help them, they will just fall down. And then when they fall down, if they really lose their balance, they'll fall sideways and they'll land on you, and then you can break something. So you're trying to keep that horse up as much as you can. They still can do that, but you're trying to get the weight on their back end. Now, if you don't do that, what happens is these lazy horses with bad proprioception don't pay attention to their feet. All their weight's on the front end the whole ride. They got their head down, they're not paying attention, and when they trip, they have so much weight on that front end to start, because normally horses have 60% on the front and 40% of their weight on the back. So if you have a trippy, lazy horse and you're riding it with its head down, like I'm riding with this horse, but he's not lazy, so I'm okay. But if you got one of those lazy ones, they probably got 80% of their weight on the front end and 20% on the back. So what do you think is going to happen when they trip? You fall forward, you drop the reins, he's got nothing to push himself back up, and so he just plows his nose and his knees into the ground. And if you're lucky, that's all he'll do. But if you're unlucky, he'll do that, and then he'll fall sideways, because that's what happens when you fall over. What do? You trip, you fall, and just like we fall. So you're trying to protect yourself. And with those horses, we can make them all better, but you always got to be ready to do that if they trip. You always got to be ready to help them, because they're just, that might be why you like the horse, because he was so calm and not spooky. But he's so calm and not spooky that when something bad happens, he just like, I'll just fall down, and then I'll eat some grass, and then maybe we'll hang out. So you want him to think, oh no, you trip, bad stuff happens. So you pull on those reins, lean back, get your feet out in front of you to push yourself back. If you can scare the horse, spur him or yell at him, whatever you got to do to wake him up, you do that, because that is your chance to keep him on his feet. Okay? So you want to make sure you do whatever you have to do so they don't fall on you. Okay? So now that's what you do when they're tripping. Now let's go back to what we do with the poles. So after we got them pretty good with the poles, and you're doing those poles 5 days a week, and you've taken them around cones, if you have anything you can make in your arena, like an obstacle course, you step them up stuff, you step them down stuff, you take them up and down stairs. Once they can do that well, then you start taking them around in your pasture, around the barn, and you find things to go up and down. And what you're trying to do is teach him what to do with his feet. So you don't want to go on a 3-hour ride, because he's not ready for that. He doesn't know what to do with his feet, and he's going to get tired. And when they get tired, we get trippy if we're walking, and they get trippy. So you want to practice this stuff at the barn and build up his agility, his strength, and his reaction time, just like those football players do. Okay? Remember, they do all that practice stuff before they go in a game. They don't just go in the game without practicing and have all that ability. So you got to train, you got to practice. So once we are going around the barn, you're teaching them what to do. When they go up the hill, you're trying to get them to engage their back end. So you're trying to push with your leg and have them slowly go up the hill, but feel them pushing you up. And when they go downhill, like we're going to do a step right now, I'm going to lower my hand. There he goes. So he did very good. He looked at it a little bit, and then he knew what to do. So when he goes downhill, you half halt, then you let him go down. And there's a step. And then you half halt, and you're doing that half halt to get their weight on their back end. You're like, nope, go slower, get your weight on your back end. Don't run forward down that hill. Now, you might say my horse runs down the hill. He might do that because he's unbalanced. He might do that because he's in pain. Or he might do that because that's what the previous owner did, so he doesn't know how to walk. So if they're fast downhill or they keep getting on their front end, I walk, stop. So I'm going to stop. Oh, stand here for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Now we walk off again. Going to go about 10 feet. Oh, going to stop. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to go again. So what that's doing is teaching the horse to get its weight on its back end. Now he does it pretty well, and he can go down this hill a little faster. He's very sure-footed. Okay? So you're trying to teach him how to go up the hills, how to go down the hills. Now see, there's a little drop-off here. You're teaching him what to do. So normally, like, we avoid that stuff, right? But you got a horse that doesn't know what to do with its feet. You got to teach it, so you go over the bad spot. So I might serpentine over this. See, I'm just weaving back and forth. There's a little gully, and I want him to learn what to do with the gully. So you serpentine over it. But you're keeping your weight back, and you're keeping that horse slow to help him. So when you're on the trail, I tell people if their horse is trippy and they're not paying attention, get off the trail. And they're like, what? I was like, yeah, go right over there. Go right through those bushes. Go right over those rocks. See that log? Go step over that log. So you're trying to teach that horse a couple of things, what to do with its feet, but also to stay awake. And if he's just going down the trail and you're on a loose rein like this, you know what he's doing? He's spacing out. He's not paying any attention. He's just following the rest of the horses, and they'll trip because they won't see what they're doing or anything. So you're trying to make sure that they're paying attention. So have your rein short, give them little jobs to do, and keep him awake. If you don't want to do that, then you got to find a horse that's good with its proprioception. We can go this way, buddy. So this, look, I got a little branch to walk over. I got some deep sand. I got a horse running over. And you want to teach him how to get through all that stuff. Now he's running up behind me. You're a little stalker, aren't you? Yeah. So, you know, this is around the barn. There's lots of different things. There's gullies, there's holes, all sorts of stuff. I don't recommend going in holes, though. But you're trying to take your horse and get them used to things. So see this hill? Instead of going up that way, I'm going to go up this hill and see how he does. And you're trying to teach him as much as you can what to do with his feet. See? But he knows how to get up hills. Okay? So remember, some horses have the natural ability and some don't, but they can all be great, but you have to try to teach them. And again, the vets only see them for an hour, so they're of course going to think something's wrong with them, and there might be. But you want to do those tests, try to make the horse more sure-footed, teach them what to do, and then if they're not getting better, then tell the vet, yeah, something's wrong with them and you need to help me. All right, I hope that explains proprioception because I'm back to the barn.